Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Monday, the 3rd of November. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined by Joshua, Barry and Chris Jack. First of all, Joshua, how goes it?
All right. Lots to talk about. Since it's going to be a busy show and a busy week. But yeah, here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris Jack also here to give us his thoughts. How goes it, Chris?
Here we are once again. Over the course of the last almost 17 years, 18 years I've been doing this job now, I feel like I've had these conversations quite a long time, quite often, as a case of Control-Alt, delete the names and insert name, insert defeat, insert controversy here.
Yeah, plenty to get our teeth stuck into. Before we do that, a quick word for our podcast sponsors, Willow's Fencing, the Glasgow-based fencing company you can trust, proud partners of the Rangers Review. They've got over 20 years of experience in the trade. No job is too big or too small for these guys, and they also offer free consultations, and you get 10% off if you use the code Rangers Review over on their website, which you can see on the ticker below, willows-fencing.com. Right, lots to unpack from yesterday's events at Hampden. Of course, myself and Johnny were on just shortly after the full-time whistle to give our reactions. You were on with Stevie as well, live from the National Stadium. Joshua, we'll just get your thoughts, first of all, you guys who were both in attendance yesterday, and what you felt unfolded before your very eyes. Rangers losing by 3-1 after extra time, having had to play large parts of the game with 10 men after Tello Asgard was dismissed after half an hour. There was refereeing controversy in there, which we'll get to. Rangers seeking an explanation from the SFA on Austin Trusty, and Celtic winning the game after Rangers' battling display in the second half. The legs just ran away with them in the end, and Celtic ran out victors. Joshua, what did you make of what you witnessed?
Yeah, well, as you say, and as Chris wrote last night with that story that Rangers are seeking an explanation, you can't not discuss that when discussing this game, because I felt that the momentum was with Rangers going into extra time, but their legs ran away from them. And James Tavernier, speaking in the mix zone, said the explanation he was given was that it wasn't effectively a forceful kick, but I think you'd argue a kick to the head is a kick to the head in a football park. And while Tello Asgard's red card was the reddest of red cards you've ever seen, albeit I don't think he knew where the ball was, but still a red card, that doesn't take away from the challenge. And similarly, Trusty, forceful or not, doesn't take away from the challenge. So I know we'll talk about that because it had a material impact from the game on the game. Aside from that, Derek, it just feels like a huge missed opportunity. And it feels like a huge missed opportunity because Rangers had the rare experience of not being Glasgow's crisis club last week. But once again, I think they've found themselves weaker than Celtic when Celtic are in a weak moment and therefore unable to seize the initiative. I honestly think it's as simple as that. And again, that's not to deflect away from refereeing calls which made a material impact. It's not to take away from Danny Rohl getting, I think, the wrong team from the start, although his changes did work in the second half and his team kept going and they had big one-on-one opportunities right throughout the game, didn't they? Even if Jack Butland had a number of saves. But for me, as we'll maybe come on to talk about throughout the podcast, again, this is a story of Danny Rohl's kind of clouded over just how bad this season has been over the course of the past week. Rangers have spent a lot of money. Celtic have been effectively in open warfare the past week with that Dermot Desmond statement, with protests outside. But the difference is they can still turn up and win these games because Rangers have been so weak this season. The money that they've spent is not translating into points. The money that they've spent up top is not translating into goals in key moments. In stark contrast to the two Celtic strikers who didn't cost them much money and did score 2 decisive goals on the day. Referee calls make a huge impact on the game. But for me, I think if you're looking at it from a Rangers point of view, again, they've not been strong enough when Celtic have been weak to really go and seize what would have been a big win on a big occasion.
Yep, can't disagree with any of that. Incidentally, we'll get to the Trusty thing, but it appears that, I remember a good few years ago when Gerrard was in charge. Remember Alan Power on Ryan Jack? He just got a yellow card for the boot to the face, and Austin Trusty escaped punishment with a boot to Jack Butland's face, which just defies belief. Chris, what did you make of what unfolded yesterday and Rangers' right to seek an explanation for that big flashpoint at the end of the first half?
Much like Josh, I think it's a conversation and a show almost that you can have in two parts. Clearly, the referee decisions are huge parts of the conversation. There's no getting away from that. I thought Asgard was unfortunate to a degree. I don't think he's gone out to make that challenge in that manner. He's been caught up challenging for it. He's really caught Ralston as a red card. I thought feel slightly sorry for him, but he had to go. The Trusty one, Josh described the Asgard one there as the reddest of red cards. The Trusty one is even redder. I feel like it's the clearest decision that the referee had to make on the day. Butland's got the ball, Trusty kicks him in the head. It's as simple as that. Referee, if he doesn't see that at the time, that's one thing. For that to then get by a VAR team and for the play to be allowed to continue with Trusty on the park is mind-boggling. There's no explanation that the SFA, and we know they'll come out with something. They'll speak to Rangers behind closed doors. As Josh said, we had that story on the site last night saying that Rangers will make that approach to the SFA. They will fob Rangers off with some form of justification. Willie Collum will go on his programme in a couple of days, couple of weeks. He'll say, well, it was maybe wrong and we'll have to learn from it. All the usual stuff that we've heard time after time after time, and it's not good enough. Now, we spoke on Friday, Derek, about the referee team and speaking about, hopefully we're not on here on Monday morning talking about referees. Lo and behold, here we are, because once again they prove that they're not up to the job, they're not good enough, and they cannot get basic decisions right. Trusty should have been off, Ralston should have been sent off, Asgard, for the record, should have been sent off. That's one part of it. The second part of it, again, I had to agree with Josh, Rangers should have won that game. Rangers have more than enough, has spent more than enough money to expect to get into an Old Firm game against a Celtic side in a really low ebb, with an interim manager, with very, very little up front, with very, very little in defence, and Rangers couldn't make the most of it. You look at the Chermite chances, you look at the Gassama chances, you look at the Raskin ones. These are big moments in any game. And an Old Firm game, they're absolutely huge. And Rangers, once again, they don't have the conviction, they don't have the quality, they don't have the mentality to be able to see that through. And of course, if it had been 11v11 or 10v10, it changes it. As I said, you can't overlook the impact on the game of the red cards. But that game was there for the winning for Rangers last night, and they couldn't get through it.
Yeah, listen, we'll get to the team and the lack of quality on the park, but again, it's another contentious, big decision that seems to go against Rangers in these fixtures. Wick Warrior with a point says, an apology next week, like every other occasion, means nothing. The only way you can fix this is to refuse to pay the money for VAR. I've said this before. I don't understand why clubs, it's not just Rangers. You've seen, David Martindale came out earlier in the season as well. Why clubs are paying for this money if they don't have the personnel to operate it properly? I don't see the point, to be honest. Just on the instant, listen, it's a red card all day long, and it's all very well and good, like you say, Chris, Willie Collum coming out on his show explaining the situation, and no doubt he'll apologise. What good does that do Rangers? I've seen social media as well. I said before this game, I said I hope we're not talking about the referees, but I said we probably will be. I said at the start of the season when Willie Collum came out saying that he hopes that there's not going to be big questionable decisions, but it seems to be every week there's a gaffe, and I think the blame lies on Willie Collum. Am I surprised? No, I think the SFA had an opportunity when Crawford Allen departed to really think outside the box and bring someone in from out with the Scottish football realm, and they refused to do that, and I don't think Willie Collum is going anywhere time soon. I don't think a guy like Mike Mulroney is going to sack him at any point. So I expect decisions like this to continue, unfortunately. I don't see it changing at any point, no matter how strongly Rangers feel about this. It just is the way it is, and it's very, very frustrating. You can understand the anger amongst the fan base at this another dubious decision. Then that's not even getting into the Anthony Ralston penalty that he was on a yellow, didn't receive a second yellow, and Celtic perhaps very fortunate to not be reduced to 9 men. So there you go. I'm hoping to get a good friend of the show, incidentally, folks, Mike McCurry, on to give us his thoughts on the flashpoints in the game at some point later today. So keep your eyes peeled for that. It'd be interesting to get a professional's viewpoint on it. But Joshua, moving on from that, I guess, and the team, as we touched on, it was a game of two halves as far as Rangers are concerned. It's a first half we've seen all too often. The team lacklustre, not starting well enough, and perhaps fortunate to just be one behind at the break. He changed a few things at half-time, of course, made a personnel change and taking Danilo off Danny Rohl. He put Jedi Gassama on. Rangers were full of grit, fight and desire in that second half, and they got the leveller through James Tavernier after the penalty we just touched on, the handball from Anthony Ralston, but they're just unable to find a winner in that 90 minutes, and tiredness just took hold after that. But did he get the team selection wrong to begin with, the manager?
Yeah, I think so. And listen, you can give him that. It's his first Old Firm game. A lot of his predecessors have been here before, maybe, and not. You think of Philippe Clement, that 2-1 defeat at Parkhead, and how big a win would have been there. You think of Michael Beale at Hampden, and would have been obviously much better for Danny Rohl if he'd managed to win yesterday. For me, Rangers looked better in that second half, Derek, just because they had quite a few ball carriers in the pitch. Mikey Moore, I thought, was really bright. Gassama misses a couple of chances that he should do better with, but also wins the penalty. And I thought that the approach that Rangers had, I don't think it would have been the plan to fall that deep, because as Stevie and I were discussing last night, you didn't have any pace to take you up the pitch. That allows Celtic to squeeze their defence right up. Yusuf Chermiti wasn't able to hold the ball up. Rangers too often pushed into a back five on their kind of heels instead of playing forward and being in that back three that we saw more obviously in the first half at Easter Road. So I do think the team was wrong. Because, and we spoke about it before the game, myself and I think Blair spoke about it for our Saturday podcast, that just maybe Gassam would, in an end-to-end game, it give you a bit of quality and individualism that is required. And I thought until Rangers had those ball carriers on the pitch, they sorely lacked it. But for me, that approach maybe would have made sense, Derek, if you were playing against a really good Celtic team. But I felt like, and again, this is descriptive of the overall situation for me, Rangers let Celtic set the tone. Rangers allowed the defence that should have been made to feel uncomfortable, I think, and did feel uncomfortable even when they were pressed with 10 men later on. There's a moment right at the end of the game where Gassam almost presses Trusty and scales into a mistake, and they just get away with it. And rather than, I think, playing with a bit more impetus from the start, they sat off too readily. And then they all just stacked against them, not just in the man disadvantage, but the goal disadvantage too. I thought, and I was surprised that Rangers and Rohl didn't try and make it into that end-to-end game from the start with one of Moore or Gassam on the pitch, because I think that would have suited Rangers a little bit more. For me, instead, they handed over the emphasis, the impetus. And again, if you look at that big Chermiti miss, which is a huge miss, and it ties together what Rangers are trying to do with that lineup probably, which is get a few bodies in the box, Tavernier from the right, Chermiti and Asgard, and we're having a very different conversation, likely, if Chermiti finishes a chance that he should finish. But Rangers got away with that VAR decision when Giga hits the ball off Raskin, and it's a marginal offside, a correct offside, but it's marginal. But then a few minutes later, they are picking the ball at the back of their net. So that will be the frustration, I think, for Rohl watching that game back, that his side looked so much more in the game when they played on the front foot, but it took them too long to get there, and eventually they just ran out of legs in extra time.
Yeah, they did, and they missed a couple of big chances, three, Raskin as well, including the two Chermiti opportunities, Chris. And listen, it's an old hard luck story. I've got an issue with that because Rangers should be going toe to toe, and Johnny mentioned this on the show yesterday, this is a poor Celtic team. Let's be honest about it. It's not Rangers coming up from the divisions and they're sort of punching above their weight here. The money that's been spent in the summer should have a Rangers team that is able to go the distance with Celtic and beat Celtic in these high-profile fixtures. But they've squandered money, mostly in the forward areas and also defensively as well for me. You need to take one of those opportunities in the first half when they come your way. You cannot fluff your lines. But Rangers have got a development player playing up front for them, and that's probably to be expected, a guy that's learning the game.
You mentioned defensively there. I'm assuming we'll come on to talk about Nasser Giga, so I'll leave him alone for now and focus my attentions on Yusuf Shamiti. It's just not good enough, is it? Now, I know people keep saying, "Oh, why do you keep talking about the fee?" And it's not his fault. It cost Rangers £8 million. That's a huge transfer fee for Rangers, and for that outlay, I don't care how good they think he's going to be in 2 or 3 seasons and what he could potentially go for. You need a striker that's going to score goals, to win you games, to win you cups, to win you the league. Shamiti's not going to do that. You've sold a guy who scored 25 goals in 2 seasons here for a guy that's got nowhere near that in his entire career. It's mind-boggling stuff. If he was coming in and he only cost 2 million and he was a development player and he was like a man was, you could just about justify it. But he's not. He's an £8 million striker that you're signed from the Premier League, and he's not good enough. He may well be good enough in 2-3 seasons' time. He may well go on and be an excellent striker, and people will say, "See, we told you so." But right now, he's not what Rangers need. You're a Rangers number 9 in that game yesterday, and you get that chance, you have to take it. Celtic have spent very little in terms of, in comparative terms. You look at the options that they've got up front. Look at the conversations that their fans have been having over the course of the season so far about how short they are at number 9. Their guys got the goals yesterday. Johnny Kenny steps up, good header, gets a goal at a really good time, and also Osman then wins it for them late on. That's the type of moments that Rangers don't have a player that could. On that park yesterday, Shamiti was nowhere near getting those moments. His big moments came and he missed both of them, both the header at the back post and also the one that Josh mentioned there. If you're 6 yards out and that ball comes in, you have to put it in the back of the net. So it may feel like we're picking on him and that we're having this discussion all the time. I think he probably feels like that with his celebration after his goal last week, which I thought, and I said at the time, was ill-advised. Rangers just need better, but that's the 3 options that we've got until January at least. And the question is, will they be in a position? Will they be able to score enough goals and win enough games to still be in the hunt for the Premiership come January, so that they can then go and try and rectify some of the mistakes, or a whole host of mistakes that have been made in terms of building this squad?
Yeah, I get a bit of stick yesterday saying that I'd be asking Panathinaikos for Dessers back, but he scored 29 goals last season. Danilo, Miovski and Chermiti are not going to get anywhere near that combined this season, and I would bet a lot of money on that at this point. J-Dub says, so why is the manager starting them, Chris? That goes back to maybe team selection. Were you surprised to see him start, Chris, yesterday instead of Miovski, who incidentally has been poor as well?
I wasn't surprised to see him start. I think Rohl did get the team wrong yesterday, but only, like Josh touched earlier on, I would have gone Gassama rather than Tav on that right-hand side, and had Tav rather than Giga. I think that was the side that I predicted on the site on Saturday morning. So I think he got it wrong, but not in terms of Shamiti. They're just not another option. I don't think it's a case of Miovski has been in excellent form himself and he's really banging on the door. He can say, well, I'm feeling a bit hard done by here. He's not done enough himself over recent times. Didn't think he'd done a whole lot yesterday either. I thought Danilo was unlucky to be the one that got changed at half time. I wonder if Danny Rohl, if he had his time again, if he'd make that same call. I thought Danilo should have been the one that stayed on and Shamiti should have been the one that came off, but wasn't surprised that he started because there's no other real viable alternative there, is there?
No. Said it before. I'd be. I mean, if he was on loan, Chinmiti, the fans would be saying cancel it in January. That's where we are with him. I'd be. Said it before. I'd be sending him out on loan to one of the loan clubs still in Albion, Wraith, or Alloa for 6 months, and then looking to bring in a proper striker ready to go now in January that you can hang your hat on, because you can't hang your hat on this boy at the moment. And for me, from what I've seen, I would be surprised if he has the minerals to make it at Rangers. But go and prove me wrong. Joshua, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, just that better players than Chinmiti have struggled to develop here. Again, we make this point all the time. Look at how long it's kind of taken Mikey Moore to show flashes. And I thought he was really bright yesterday. Over the course of the past week, he's been bright off the bench.
Yep.
But to repeat points, Amad Diallo, Malik Tillman, Fabio Silva is now playing for Borussia Dortmund. This is a difficult club to develop at. And that lesson should have been heeded to when that money was being spent for Chinmiti. I have no doubt that he can. There's a lot of the attributes that, if put together, if developed well, he can be a good striker. At the moment, at 21, I don't think he's anywhere close to the finished product. But as Chris said there, what is he, the second most expensive transfer in the club's history, Chris?
With 21, he's that's all right saying that if he's 17 or whatever. He should have matured at this point.
Yeah, but he's obviously not played that much football. But the point is, if you're spending that much money, the expectation is going to be intense up here, as it rightly should be, because that's a lot of money for Rangers to spend. To cast your mind back 12 months ago, Hamza Gaman, who is now, he's been one of the form strikers in the top 5 leagues.
Yeah.
Again, just inconceivable to me that he only spent 2 months playing as a striker for Rangers. Again, showing how difficult it can be to develop at this club. But that £1.7 million, Clement has said, I remember after Dundee United away, it was the first time that Igaman had come on and he was kind of chesting the ball after kicks from the goalkeeper, and people could see, there's a bit of a player here. And Clement said, look, I know he's not played much so far, but we couldn't have afforded him next summer. That argument makes sense when a player costs £1.7 million, not when they cost £8 million.
Yes.
Because just the scale of how good he will be to have to sell him at a profit. So I agree with Chris that I feel for Chinmiti on an individual level, because I'd love to see him go and score 20 goals for Rangers this season and play brilliantly and prove people wrong. It's a deeper, wider issue of looking at the fact that better players have struggled to develop here than him. Diallo, Silva, Tillman, others. Unless you were on top here, I just think it's such a difficult environment in which to do that. And you need to be able to perform in big moments, which, yesterday is that big moment. So if he scores that goal, the game's different. The mood around him is very different. But the striking position for me, Derek, something that I think we've said quite consistently for a couple of months. I look at that and I worry and I think, is that stronger than last season? I don't think it is. And it's a striking position that is what cost you the best part of £20 million to assemble when you think of Danilo and Miovski and what their Chinmiti deal could rise to. Different people have signed those strikers at different points, which again speaks to the club going in loads of different directions over recent years. The frustration people will feel alongside, I think, the referee calls today is this summer was supposed to sort of mark the end of that. And again, I go back to the point at the top of the show. Yet again, for me, the feeling coming away from Hampden yesterday was Celtic have had a terrible start to the season by their own standards, and the Champions League exit, Rodgers leaving, all the stuff going on between the board and the fans, but Rangers have not been strong enough to really apply the pressure, and that I just think is such a huge error that we have to focus on.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, the thing is, when Igaman first appeared, you looked at him and you went, "All right, you can see this guy's got something about him." You can understand why the club brought him in, but Chinmiti, there's just nothing at the moment, which is a big concern. Defensively, then, Chris, because that is also a big concern. Rangers all over the shop at points. He kept with it the back three, of course, Danny Rohl, which I think is the right thing to do. Personnel, though, is not good enough. I think we can all agree on that. You mentioned Nasser Giga earlier. Oh boy, trying not to go two-footed on him, but he looks out his depth at Rangers somewhat. I think Wolves have slightly overpaid for him, shall we say. I was, when we got, I think, a Wolves podcaster on, I spoke to someone when he signed off. In fact, we never got someone on, but I did speak to someone who he never played much for Wolves, but he said on the ball he's a bit suspect. He's not the only one. I think John Souttar hasn't performed at the level that is required for Rangers this season in the main also. And I think it's a big concern because a number of loan players are in there. Derek Cornelius, incidentally, I thought I had a decent enough game yesterday. I've been pretty pleased with his contribution. But that aside, I think Rangers need a whole new backline. Whether they can get that in January is probably going to be difficult, but it is something that needs addressed.
I'll take Giga, and I'll leave John Souttar to Josh. He can he can discuss one of his favourite subjects. Giga, his afternoon started with the first one that he put straight out of play. The second one, he didn't control the ball that's coming out the air, and it didn't really get much better from that, did it? Josh mentioned the one earlier on, puts it straight off Raskin. Rangers get away with it. He just looked so like rabbit caught in the headlights stuff. Didn't look comfortable on the ball. Didn't look comfortable in the game. And as you touched on there, Derek, Rangers are going to get to the end of this season, and the only defender they're going to have on their books is Manny Fernandez at £3.5 million that can't get a game. It doesn't really speak to squad building, squad planning, doesn't really speak to sustained success, does it? No. The Giga one, I just don't see it. It's not working so far. I'm not convinced it will work. And as I touched on a couple of minutes ago, I thought Tav should have played in that right centre half role instead. That's the options that they've got. Now, do you stick with Giga? Do you try and play him into form in some regards, or do you take him out the firing line and do you put someone like Fernandez in and say, right, you've got a couple of games, go and show us what you can do, go and show us what your attributes are. I wouldn't be against that for Thursday night, I have to say, because you just on that performance and what we've seen from Giga, looking as I say unsure on the ball and unsure in these games as he has been. Can you trust him against Roma and Ibrox? Can you trust him to go to Dens Park at the weekend in a game that Rangers cannot afford to drop anything in? I think if those calls are made and Danny Rohl starts them, they're big shows of faith in a guy who's not done an awful lot to deserve that.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in, Paul, and I agree with you, Buddy. Says we 100% need to see Nsiala now. Yeah, I would love to see Nsiala back in the fold. It can't be any worse than what's been served up, although he's left-sided, isn't he? But I think Magoma, again, defensively suspect. Joshua, John Souttar for you?
Well, just on Giga, I agree that first half, I was amazed to see him come out for the second half. And in fairness, I thought he was a bit steadier in the second half. But the first half, for me, he set the tone with skying the ball way out of touch with his first touch. And then he let the ball run under his feet minutes after, and Tenekti kind of got through. I see the logic in not playing Tav there for me because then you have Gassama becoming right back at points. And I think Gassama should have started on the left side, a bit able to take you up the pitch. But also it means that the Celtic defence can't push all the way into the Rangers half in the first half because they have the threat of pace in behind. For me, I thought Souttar was almost just as culpable yesterday at points because he lost that duel with Osmond or Kenny all too frequently in that kind of central centre-back spot. And for me, Derek, again, when you've spent that money on Manny Fernandez, not Trimiti levels, but not insignificant. You're talking over £3 million.
I know
he needs to play football, and if he's not playing football, I know Kevin Thewell spoke about that. I think at one of the press conferences, didn't he? If he's not playing football, the question is why? Because we knew last season that Rangers needed a new spine coming into this season. They needed I would say, a centre back to really build around. Now I agree with you. I think Cornelius has looked good. I think he's probably been a 6 or maybe a 7 out of 10 generally when he's played. But you needed a centre back or two to build around. You needed a midfielder to build around alongside a Raskin and a Diomande, but Joe Rothwell's been nowhere to be seen. You needed a couple of strikers to come and replace the goal contributions that Dessers Nigaman gave you. And let's not forget Václav Černý too. He scored 18 goals last season, and no one's coming close to replicating that so far. Because if you have a couple more finishers in that team, there is the opportunities in the first half. Raskin's one, both of Chermiti's chances, one at the back post, that one at the front post while the game is still 0-0, to turn it and to change it. So I agree with you in the state of defence. Again, a lot of money has been spent there. I think going to a back three, it makes sense. But when you've spent that type of money on someone like Manny Fernandez as November and you've not seen him, you needed a guaranteed starter in there, Derek. And watching last season's football, I think you could absolutely see that.
I mean, fans, I just don't get the Manny Fernandez signing. Not to say that he was the reason why Peterborough finished as low as they did last season, but they finished just 5 points above the drop zone in League One. And given the reaction of their fans, they could not believe Rangers were paying so much money for this guy, and he's not had a look in. So again, question marks over Kevin Thelwell and the recruitment team as to why they're bringing in guys like this that are nowhere near good enough for Rangers.
Just quickly on that as well. If Fernandez has started, and again, like Ciala, you want to see a guy he's got a brilliant story behind him, Fernandez, because he was without a club in COVID, and I think looking at him, if you look at his size and the fact that he's comfortable in the ball at points, there's things there that you can see. Oh, maybe he can add it together and make a good player. But because he's not played much, my question would be, well, surely Ciala, who played a fair amount of football after he came in last season, could he not be your kind of fourth or fifth choice centre back, allowing you to spend that money on an out and out starter on the right wing or an out and out number 6 to build around? And that's what stands out to me, is that I think any transfer can make sense at certain points. Every player has a highlights reel you can show, and every player has a positive, a could be this player. But what Rangers needed this summer was a lot of would-be players right now.
Exactly.
And the context of where they are. And that's why at the start of the show, the failure to capitalise and take advantage of Celtic where they're weak, recruitment comes back into that, because you needed more ready now players to go and give you a bit of a head start. And then you allow players to develop behind you, because it's a much easier place to develop when you're winning. When you're not, when you're losing, you're on the back foot, and we just end up having these type of conversations, which we've ultimately had a lot before.
Yep, I want to touch the midfield. I'll come back to you, Joshua, on this. Nico Raskin's come in for a bit of criticism. He's not been firing on all cylinders of late. Still thought it was a bit of a surprise to see him hooked for the start of extra time with Oliver Antman coming on. Rangers had never had a recognised midfielder in there. It was a sort of Tav, Antman, Moore trio, which was a bit weird, but there you go. Was that a mistake, perhaps, taking him off at that point, even though I would still have him in my team? But yeah, was it a bit of an eye raiser for you?
What was an eye raiser is that you go from a starting 11, which is pretty conservative, to then, as you say, going 10 men in a central midfield partnership of James Tavernier and Mikey Moore. Now, to be fair to Rohl, maybe smelled blood at that point in the game and thought we can go after it. Would Nico Raskin have got out with that, with his defensive nous to stop Cal McGregor's shot from the edge of the box, which I think Jack Butland should save, even though he'd made a lot of saves up until that point. So you take that into context. But maybe Raskin, who you presume his legs had just gone by that point, that's the only justification I can think of. But yeah, what stands out to me with team selection, Derek, is I feel like it was one extreme to the other. I'd have rather seen a Gassam or a Moore in the team at the start instead of then almost taking out all your defensive options. Even Aaron's at right back instead of Giga, and left back instead of Magoma. I'd have rather seen a little bit more of an attacking team at the start instead of going like that with 10 men. It was brave, but maybe could have been a bit braver from the off.
Yeah. Chris, where does this leave Rangers? I said it yesterday on the post-match with Johnny. Someone mentioned they've only got the Scottish Cup now left to play for. I think in terms of Thursday, it's win or bust for Rangers. Draw's no good. But yeah, in terms of the league, if Danny Rohl can somehow magic some results out of this squad of players that he's been given, then he's done a remarkable job. If they get to January, I'm going to say within touching distance. I don't even know what that would be with Hearts so well clear at this point in time. But if they're within 5 of Celtic and no worse off to Hearts, then I think he's probably done a decent enough job there. What's left for Rangers, you reckon?
Thursday, unfortunately, is a bit of a waste of time, which 3 games into Europa League campaign, we never thought we'd be saying that. It's a competition that Rangers have done so well in over the years, but the results so far, nowhere near good enough. Performances nowhere near good enough. And even if they were to somehow beat Roma on Thursday, I think the job's far too big for them. Going to need to take something out of every game that's left, probably win every game or certainly win most of the games that's left. So I'd be surprised if there's anything left for Rangers in the Europa League. Premiership, we just don't know, because Hearts is the flying ointment right now. Is that gap too big, or will the Hearts stumble? Will the Hearts drop off be of that proportion that a 13-point gap is not actually insurmountable? We just don't know. Like you said there, Derek, if they can get to January 5 behind Celtic, I think Rangers would bite your hand off for that. Mm-hmm. That's only a good situation, though, if you're then able to recruit wisely in January, if you're able to show that you've learned the lessons from the summer, if you're able to show that you can actually go and add the right players in the right positions to make this squad and this side better in the second half of the season. If they could somehow get to January only 5 behind Celtic, given everything that's gone on at Ibrox this season, that would be a really sound job from Danny Rohl at that stage. But see, Hearts is the bit that we just don't know. That gap could be too big. It could be something that's whittled away within the space of 3-4 weeks if Hearts don't maintain this form. So too hard to say Rangers are or are not in a title race, because we just can't make that prediction right now because of what's happening at Tynecastle.
Yep. Before we wrap up, hit that like button, folks. Helps us out at the channel. If you've not subscribed, hit the subscribe button as well. Hit the notification bell. You'll never miss a video when we go live. We'll just wrap up with this. I noticed that Alan McCoy was on his TalkSport breakfast show this morning talking about the game. I'll just read you a little snippet of what he had to say. He says, a much better game with goals, plenty of incident, which I'll have a moan about. I don't have any doubt about that. It was a much better spectacle. Celtic were the better team in the first half. Rangers were really poor first half. Then the sending off changed the game. Rangers were miles better after the sending off, which was a sending off. I don't think the lad meant it, but I thought it was a poor tackle and probably was the right decision. Remarkably, the referee did not send off the Celtic centre-half for deliberately kicking the Rangers goalkeeper in the head. It was one of the worst decisions I've seen in a long time. Then VAR don't send him off either. The game to and fro. Rangers get the penalty later on. There was a bit of debate about that, which I thought was a penalty. There's a surprise, but it was a great game, a really good game, really enjoyable. The result didn't go our way, but that was a disappointment. But I was just pleased it was a far better game. So there you go. That is what Super Ali had to say on yesterday's events. Right, folks, that will do us there. Big thank you to Joshua and to Chris. Thank you to you all for tuning in to the show. There's a Max Aarons interview coming up on the YouTube channel around about 12 noon. I think that'll be out with you folks. So you can watch that if you like. If we don't speak to you later, then enjoy your Monday, whatever you're doing, and we'll chat again soon. Bye for now.